Hi guys, it's Orlando City UK here, and I'm delighted to say a special guest joins me today. It's fellow Brit and Charlotte FC radio colour commentator Jessica Charman. Welcome to the show.
You got my name right. It's so refreshing. I think it's because you're from England. The Americans love to make it more difficult than it is. So I'm really glad you pronounced it correctly. Good start. Yes, sir.
So we're going to be previewing with with Jessica today. With Jessica today, Orlando City FC's game with Charlotte FC this Saturday. We're going to reflect on both the Lions and Charlotte FC's first 9 games so far this MLS season, as well as asking Jessica a few more questions about her own career working in Major League Soccer. Super excited to ask those questions. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, I want to start this chat today with MLS inaugural seasons. How super fun are they, right? I mean, I remember ours, it was a little while ago now in 2015 at the Citrus Bowl. Amazing memories, but tell us, Jessica, how are you enjoying the ride that is Charlotte FC so far?
Well, I think it's really special, particularly coming from England, because we don't really have anything to compare it to in terms of inaugural seasons getting thrown in at the deep end, so to say. In England, if you're starting a new club, you're going to start down in the bottom tiers of football and just work your way up. So it's a really odd experience in some ways for a team to be brand new and be playing at the highest level, but it's also incredible. I don't know where all the fans have come from. I think it's marvelous how many people are here watching, and it's just been a whirlwind. What I love about my role is how amazing it is to be in from the start, right? There's never been anyone else in my role. There's never been anyone else to educate and entertain the fans on the radio like I'm getting to do. So it's kind of nice because I'm able to pave the way. I'm not having to be compared to a lot of people as well, which is always a special thing. And MLS is growing. You know, Orlando's obviously in the South as well. And stigma wise, the South is kind of like the country and, you know, the Bible Belt. And a lot of people thought that soccer wouldn't be able to thrive there. Orlando, Atlanta, Nashville, and now Charlotte are all able to kind of show that, like, that it does belong here. So it's been really awesome to see people welcome it with open arms as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it segues on nicely to my next question, actually. I was super excited to ask Jessica this today. Before we move on to the preview, of course, that incredible inaugural fixture at Bank of America Stadium, it was, what was it, about a few weeks back now, of course. The light show, 74,479 fans in attendance. It is now the all-time MLS attendance record. Charlotte smashed it. Just talk us through your memories and emotions from calling that game. You lost the game, and it was a great goal from LA Galaxy, but surely it was more than the result on that day.
Yeah, the win would have been a cherry on the top. The performance was good. It was disappointing. I think going into that one against LA Galaxy, I was concerned it was going to be a far different style of match. The fact that Charlotte was able to compete was a great thing, and going away feeling disappointed about the result. But you're right, it was so much more than that. I mean, you know, growing up, everyone wants to be involved in football in England in some sort of way in their life, right? So for me to have this opportunity to not only be a part of, you know, a record-breaking attendance crowd, but to be working during it was amazing. And I look back at it and it feels a bit like a dream, honestly. I'm glad I took a lot of pictures. I'm glad I have the footage to listen back to and to be a part of, because it was a whirlwind. It was crazy to look down from the perfect view, obviously, because at a commentator's box, you've got an amazing view, and to be a part of it. It was hard not to get carried away at sometimes, because you're watching it and you're remembering, wait, I need to be talking about stuff. But it was the real moment that it clicked for me that, wow, I'm really getting to live a dream, you know, an opportunity that so many people would like. And it was sort of like that push to me to make sure I always do the best job possible, because I want experiences like that as often as I can get them.
Yeah, no, it's super cool to see you in the position you're in at Charlotte FC. I'm so jealous weekly, honestly. It's not my team, Charlotte FC, but seeing you call the games and seeing you live out that dream in the States, it's just super cool. So next, I want to talk about Charlotte FC's roster building. At Orlando City, obviously, we're always interested in the new expansion sides that come into the league. But for our fans who might not know Charlotte FC that well, tell us what moves were made in the off-season and which new arrival excites you most.
I think it's a really tough one. Anyone that follows MLS in general has probably seen the criticism that Charlotte FC has had in their roster build, interestingly, because they haven't necessarily done it the way that a lot of other clubs have. People made fun of the fact they've had a long time to do it and they still only have one designated player. Well, now they have two, but at the time they only had one during the start of the season. But you've got to remember it was during a pandemic. It's difficult to attract players to cross boundaries when their family aren't necessarily going to be able to come. So I think there was a lot of adversity that Charlotte FC faced that people didn't necessarily discuss when they were criticizing the build. But the manager's been the most exciting thing for me. Miguel Angel Ramirez is an incredible manager. He's a young guy, 37 years old, and he's not really a household name apart from maybe in Ecuador where he got a lot of his experience. But I think he's taken MLS by storm. Obviously, he had his "we're screwed" comment, which made its way around social media circles very quickly. That was a very fun introduction to the job when I realized that the manager's saying we're screwed with the squad that they have. But I think he was a lot smarter than people give him credit for. I think he was trying to manage expectations. He was trying to sort of set the boundaries low so that everything that we did would be impressive of that. And I think that's exactly what's happened. He's managed this team. He's bringing lots of pieces together. Again, in England, I think people will be excited about Kamil Józwiak, the Polish guy that's played under Wayne Rooney with Derby. Let's be honest, it's been a really tough season to play at Derby, obviously with the points deduction, trying to survive in the Championship. I'm not sad that they didn't survive. Obviously, as a Reading fan back home, it was in our benefit, but absolutely. He's a really exciting player. And I think that the parallels between Championship and MLS in terms of physicality, in terms of that competitive nitty gritty will really suit him. He obviously knows Karol Swiderski, who's the Polish man that's really had the main press plaudits for us because of the goals he scored. You've seen a cracking free kick. You've seen an excellent long distance shot. You've seen him as a bit of a poacher. But he's been labeled a lot by MLS media that hasn't watched him play as a poacher. I don't think that's fair at all. He's a player that Orlando are going to need to be worried about in the midfield as well. He likes to get back into the action and show things. And then another exciting one, Christian Fuchs. You know, it was a signing that, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't sure he was going to play that much. He is towards the end of his career, 37 years old, but he's a Premier League winner. And what experience can you have better than that? What leadership can you have better than that? He wears our captain's armband and he's played every minute. So he's impressed me with how much he's played. Does he sometimes lack the pace that maybe you want to have in this league? Yes, but I think he makes up for it in positioning, in, you know, his other attributes. And a lot of people are excited. I got to interview him the other day, and it's amazing to have that chance, because who doesn't respect someone that's won the Premier League, particularly with Leicester?
Absolutely. I have some interesting trivia as well. I'm glad you brought up Christian Fuchs. Some interesting trivia on the Austrian. He follows us at Orlando City UK, right? About 3 MLS seasons ago, so a little while ago now. He followed us, and he follows a ton of people on Twitter. And I was like, I thought about starting my own transfer rumor, because clearly, you know, he'd watched MLS and, you know, he was used to the league, but he followed us. And I thought, wow, that's random. And clearly, you know, years ago, he had eyes on a move coming over there. So, well,
and his family, I found out his family live in New York. They never lived in England. So he's always had family, like his kids, his wife live in New York. So I think one of the things he said to us was moving to Charlotte has cut the distance, you know, by a third. It's one thing traveling from New York to Charlotte, still not ideal, but from New York to Leicester was probably a lot further. So he also talks about how the respect for the league, you know, in Europe, I think we're seeing it more and more, and in England, and what you're doing is so important as well, that people don't have such a stigma attached to MLS now. It's a more respected league, and people are excited about watching it. It's a better product than maybe we saw 5-10 years ago.
100%. Yeah, well said. In the years we've been running Orlando City UK, we started after Orlando's inaugural season. So at the end of 2015, and honestly, the league has gone, you know, just up and up and up in terms of quality and interests. So it's fantastic to see, and fantastic to see Charlotte FC capturing the imagination as well. Now, heading on to the preview for Saturday, we're meeting Charlotte FC at an interesting time. The Queen City side picked up their first road point last weekend, getting a 0-0 draw at Colorado Rapids. And as the Eastern Conference stands right now, they're on 10 points. So they're in 8th place, 3 wins, 1 draw, 5 defeats. I think that's pretty solid form in an inaugural season, early stages, of course. How important do you think that first road point was for the group? Obviously, you got 3 wins all coming at home at Bank of America Stadium, but now you guys have picked up that first point on the road. Is there a lot to read into that heading into this matchup at Exploria Stadium?
I think it was vital to kind of get that monkey off your back. It's kind of like when we were waiting for our first goal. The longer it goes on for, the more nervous players are, the more that you become expecting. If you go down a goal and you're used to losing, you start to think, oh, here we go again, sort of thing. What's interesting about that draw, though, is everyone left, fans, players alike, slightly disappointed with the fact that it was only a point, which you never expect to say against Colorado. You're going to altitude. It's a different place to play. It's like another planet going up 5,000, 6,000 feet, whatever the altitude is over there, different, fitness test. So for them to come away 0-0, we had the golden opportunity to score a goal. One of our players off the bench, Mackenzie Gaines, went for glory instead of playing the square ball across to Swiderski. I've forgiven him. Some of the fan base haven't. So it's an interesting time to meet us because, yes, we're happy about the point, but we're also really mad that it wasn't 3 points. So we want to go to Orlando, obviously, and turn that 1 point into 3. And on the same side, looking at you guys' results and how it's been a difficult time at home, and you had the tough loss against New York Red Bulls, who are obviously a quality side, but you've got players that are also in that same mindset of being really pissed off about the results. So you're going to have 2 sides that are feeling some kind of way after the match. It's a really important moment on the pitch. I think both sides will be looking to sort of right the wrong of how they feel hard done by from their previous match.
This is exactly it. And we're scorned. Obviously, you referenced it there, a 3-0 home defeat to the New York Red Bulls on Sunday. And I was shocked, I've got to admit. We'd just come off a really convincing 2-0 road win at the Columbus Crew. We'd beaten our I-4 Derby rivals, Tampa Bay Rowdies, in the US Open Cup. And I was shocked by the performance, really. It's not to take away from the Red Bulls' performance. As you said, a quality side in Major League Soccer, definitely one of the best pressing sides. And they really did a number on us. So I'm really intrigued to see how we're going to react going into that one. What I'd say for the Charlotte FC fans watching this preview is that in the last couple of seasons, especially under Oscar Pereira, Orlando City, obviously, we've made the playoffs. We've got that monkey off our back under Pereira, but we are consistently inconsistent. Just when you feel like we've turned the corner, I mean, on the game on Sunday, if we won, we could have gone top of the Eastern Conference. Just when we want to make that next step, we don't quite do it. We've had those kind of growing pains. So really interested to see how this one's going to match up. But tell us, Jessica, injury front right now. Joseph Mora, Christian Ortiz came in your last game against the Rapids. Christian McCoon, Ben Bender went out. But what is it looking like on the injury front right now? Are you at full strength, or are there any key absentees heading into this game in Florida?
So pretty full strength, mostly. Josviak had some sort of illness. They didn't describe what illness it was, but that kept him out of the last match. So we haven't actually seen him in MLS yet. Maybe he'll make his first appearance against Orlando. I wouldn't say most likely it'll be a start because he hasn't played 90 minutes anyway. He played in the Open Cup. We got to see a little bit of him. He was cracking. He played really well. But again, you've got to take that with a pinch of salt. You're playing against Greenville, who put in a battle, but a USL quality side. The biggest loss, though, is Adam Armour. He's not a starting player, but he is the individual that scored the first goal in history against Atlanta. He's been on crutches recently. There's been no actual official confirmation of what injury he has, but we saw him go down in Greenville, and the minute it happened, I knew it was something bad. As a player, I had a lot of knee injuries. You know that moment where you see, the turn that's not in the pitch, that something's wrong. I think he's a huge loss because he's been a live wire off of the bench. And a lot of the time we talk about our starting 11 as such an important thing, but in MLS, particularly now with 5 subs, right, which I'm still not sure how I feel about 5 subs, the depth is so important to be able to bring quality off the bench. So I think he's going to be a huge loss. You mentioned the fact Ben Bender didn't start. I think that he's a youngster, right? He's in his rookie season out of college. He's adjusting to the speed of game. It's important that he doesn't also get ahead of himself. He's been brilliant, don't get me wrong, but sometimes you've got to kind of keep these players humble. You've got to keep them grounded. You've got to keep them motivated. Titi Ortiz hadn't featured very much. He's now a player to definitely watch. He's been brilliant, and he's showing us now why he made his arrival in Charlotte. I just think he struggled to adjust to MLS like so many international players do.
Yes, definitely. Looking at the form so far, it's only 9 games. We're still early on in the season, but you've had 3 victories so far. They've all come at home. We know how important home form is in MLS, especially in an inaugural season. But they've all come at home in front of 30,000 plus supporters. Tell us, because you're there in the booth every week, how key has the support been? And I'm interested. I really wanted to ask you about this, Jessica. What have you guys been doing in the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, to promote the home games? Because I have to say, with Orlando City, we captured the imagination in a big, big way. We filled the Citrus Bowl twice in the early seasons, and we really struggled in our first 5 years in the league. It was well documented how we didn't make the playoffs. It was our Achilles heel. We finally scaled that mountain under Oscar Pereira, but for some strange reason, support seems to have dwindled since we've been getting better on the field. So I'm interested because I want to speak to our own people in Florida and see what we can do to get the fans back in. But how have you guys been capturing the imagination? Obviously, it's your first MLS season, of course.
Yeah, firstly, I think that you can't underestimate the home crowd. It's been vital. They really are constantly making noise. They're incredible with the chants. They support through thick and thin. And so far, they haven't really had much of a reason to not get behind the side, obviously, because things have been pretty good in general for an inaugural side. But I think it speaks volumes for the way that they really do add that 12th man that we talk so much about metaphorically. In terms of how we're getting people in there, I think firstly, obviously, it's the inaugural season. So let's see if this continues for the next couple of years. But I have a good feeling about it because so much of what is being done is, number one, capturing people across the Carolinas. Of course, the name is Charlotte FC, but we're really trying to appeal to everyone across the Carolinas. For instance, I have a flagship radio station. We're on WFNZ, but we're across 10 other different radio stations in a radio network. So they're playing us across the Carolinas, South Carolina, North Carolina. So we're really appealing to everyone week in, week out. We do radio hits across all of them to try and just get people to hear about soccer and become used to it. I think the supporters groups have had an amazing role. That was something I had to get used to moving to America, of course, because it's not something we're really used to with English clubs, but they've really got a diverse range of supporters groups who work together collaboratively, which is something that's quite rare. A lot of the time there's inner tiffs between supporters groups, whereas we've got a really good community between them all that work together, but each one has a special niche to attract different fans into it, whether there's groups that are all about family, which I think is oftentimes forgotten in supporters groups because a lot of them are about the rowdiness, about the ultra sort of style, but we do a very good job of having family orientated ones, newbie orientated ones. There's not that soccer snobbery that we see sometimes. So that's been really good. But I think the biggest component for me is the way that both the manager and the players interact with the fans. I mean, we do a 30-minute pregame show after things have wound down, and we have obviously commercials into that. There's literally players still signing autographs when we get done. They stay out, they sign autographs, they meet players, they take pictures. Every single match, Miguel Angel Ramirez, the manager, is posting on his personal Instagram page, thank you to the fans, pictures with the fans. And I don't think that's something you see at every club. I think a lot of, even after losses, they're spending that time to go talk to the fans. And when you feel appreciated, when you turn it into this event where you feel like the players are normal people that appreciate you, that you're going to go to a game and not only watch a soccer game, but feel like part of the community, I think that's huge. And long may that continue. Because like I said, I've been around, I spent time in Atlanta with Atlanta United, and I watched, and yes, they were good with their fans, but I don't think there was the same level of interaction and normalcy in the communication that really makes you feel included in the game.
I'm smiling, nodding and listening fondly for 2 reasons. Firstly, because what you're speaking about here in the inaugural season and the feeling of community and You know, it was when you said about the Charlotte FC players staying behind long after the game, you know, signing every autograph. We went through that exact same thing at Orlando City, and it's something that struck a chord with me, being an English football fan, like yourself, first and foremost. It's a different side. We just don't see it in our league because MLS is a developing league in comparison. But it's all of those things that has fueled our kind of passion and obsession for the club. So it's really interesting to hear how your season's gone. Secondly, smiling and nodding because you referenced Atlanta United there. And this question is on the fly, but being an Orlando City supporter, obviously we've not seen eye to eye with those guys. It's been a manufactured rivalry that I will say has become real now, honestly. What I want to ask you, though, being in the Carolinas with Charlotte, not a million miles away, you've played them twice this season. What has the feeling been like? I'm really interested.
Well, firstly, behind the scenes, I live in Atlanta, just south of Atlanta. This is what's nuts. So I commute to Charlotte. Obviously, I got the call about this job, honestly, like a month before the season started, too soon to remove. I spent a lot of time with Atlanta United. That's where I called my first professional games. I called with their second team, the USL team. So it was a really weird adjustment for me. And a lot of my Twitter follow was Atlanta United fans. So there was a little bit of bitter, sweet banter. And I think it's been amazing, honestly, the interactions. And I do think, yes, you talk about how a lot of time in MLS, they try and force the rivalries because they call it rivalry week and they try and kind of play it on. But some of it stems from other sports. Like American football is huge in Atlanta. It's huge in Charlotte. And there's two sides that really don't like each other in the Panthers and the Falcons. So I think there was already animosity between the two cities, and it's only kind of fueled. I think off the pitch, there's mutual respect. Mostly, you know, Twitter can be a horrible place, but there seems to be a lot of mutual respect on the game. I mean, both games were heated. It seemed like the players had built into it. Our teams, social media teams, were playing against each other. Obviously, Darren Eales, the president of Atlanta United, had his criticism of our mascot, which I think is completely weird coming from England, where most teams have mascots.
Amazing comeback tweet, by the way, with the breaking of the rail. With the
yes. I'm very impressed with our social media team, but I feel that what the craziest thing was, right? A lot of Atlanta United fans assumed that it was going to be really easy to beat Charlotte, and then both games were far closer than they ever imagined. And that's the most important thing about a rivalry. You can have rivalries based on geography, you can have rivalries based on class and stuff like that, but if you never get to play each other, if you never have close matches, if it's always one-sided, that rivalry sort of disappears. I use Reading as a figurehead. Reading and Swindon Town are rivals, and growing up, that was two towns that really hated each other. But in my lifetime, I think I've only seen them play 2, 3, 4 times. Yeah, exactly. And once it gets to that, it disappears. So that's what's awesome about MLS. You can create these rivalries because if you're in the same conference, you're seeing each other every single year twice. So I'm excited to see how that blossoms. And it must be nice for you guys to share some Atlanta hate with other people as well.
It comes too easy to us, honestly. But what it is, on our last pod, we spoke with Alex Steck at FC Cincinnati, so a different geographical region of the States. But was explaining to her and some other groups, the thing with Atlanta United is obviously they came into the league after us. They play in an NFL stadium and didn't have to, spend top dollar in a soccer-specific stadium like we did. And they've won MLS Cup. They've got their hands on the prize that we so wanted. So it might have been manufactured at the beginning, but like you say, playing teams that are geographically close together and building the rivalry organically is super exciting. So
and when the players buy into it too, right? I always remember Joseph Martinez and I'm your daddy or whatever he said to Orlando. Like, sorry to bring that up, but it's kind of fun when the players buy into it, when they have that physicality on the pitch as well. So, and tides have turned. I mean, you're sitting above them on the table now, so it must be feeling kind of pretty there.
We just got to get our hands on the cup, but yeah, sitting pretty right now, that's for sure. Now, final question on the preview before we move on to kind of your own career working at Charlotte FC. Just wanted to get your take on this. It's been a busy off-season of refreshment in Orlando. Everyone would have been familiar with Nani, Daryl DK, Chris Mueller. We lost 3 big players in those guys in the winter. Nani going to Venezia, Daryl Dike at West Bromwich Albion, and Chris Mueller at Hibernian in the SPL. We've got new ownership, the Wilf family, who own the Minnesota Vikings. They've come in. To be fair to them, they've spent their top dollar. They've brought in Facundo Torres and Urchin Carr as two new designated players. Two players who've shown glimmers of being real talents in the recent weeks. Tell us that. I'm interested from the outside looking in. Which Orlando City players are you most concerned about facing this weekend?
I think it's less so I think it's about whether Orlando City shows up, right? I don't know if you talk about how your DPs have sort of not clicked yet. I think it takes a whole team effort from Orlando to be effective. I'm not sure if you have someone that's going to stand on their head and be someone that we have to mark out the game like we have a Karol Swiderski, right? In the locker room for Orlando, you're going to be circling a player that you need to man mark. I don't know necessarily if that's the case with Orlando City or whether we have to be effective with our system and defending you. I noticed watching your game against the New York Red Bulls, which obviously isn't a fair representation of yourself, though, that at times you're able to break forward and you have that speed and you have that directness that mixes in with the way you want to play. We need to be aware of that. We're not very good at dealing with direct play. And I think that the most important thing for Charlotte FC is to focus on themselves. We, against Philadelphia Union, changed our entire game plan. And that was costly for us. I think we're going to go into this one and try and play how we play best instead of looking at the opposition. But you've got a cracking goalkeeper. I'll say that I love watching, what's his face?
Pedro Gallese, best in MLS for us. I mean, we're super biased, of course, but
no, but he's brilliant. Yeah. He is brilliant, and on the international stage as well. And I think when he was on international duty, you guys, it's more difficult, isn't it, when he's away? So
I hope I don't put the mockers on him now by giving him the big build-up, but El Pulpo, we call him in Central Florida, the octopus.
The octopus, yes, that's my Spanish going.
His reflexes in the years he's been with us, absolutely amazing. He's such a good shot stopper, so hopefully he can get a shout out this weekend. But moving forward, our last section of the interview with Jessica today, super excited to ask about kind of your own personal experience. You've already mentioned you're a Reading supporter. They're your English team since birth. But tell us, you touched on it briefly, but how did the Charlotte FC job come about? And I want to know, you're living the dream out there, honestly, but what is the best thing about working in MLS?
So I ended up in America in 2013. I did the whole college soccer scholarship, played over here in Georgia, had played for Reading and Watford before I moved over here. But at the time, I'm sort of in that cusp between when women's professional soccer became truly attainable and before that. So for me, the best thing to do was to have a full ride scholarship. So they paid for my education, they paid for all of that stuff, and go and play. I played and was pretty successful in my college career, but my sophomore year, which is your second year, the men's team needed a commentator. They knew I was studying journalism, sports broadcasting, because this was something I always wanted to do. I grew up watching Match of the Day. I stayed up late watching Match of the Day, imagined that I would be able to do that one day, but was pretty good at it. So when I graduated college, I got a real job, quote unquote, working for a soccer charity. But my side gig was commentating. I was able to commentate college games because that's what's awesome about America. Soccer at all levels is taken so seriously that you can have a job paid to go and call college games on ESPN Plus, that kind of thing. So I called a lot of college games. I got into some of the USL games, really started to be fairly well known within those small soccer circuits. And I guess, you know, the right people get to know you. And it was January, so that close to the season beginning in January, I got a phone call. I believe someone dropped out. Basically, it feels like fate. And they called me and they're like, look, we know you live in Georgia. We know that you've just had a kid. Would you be interested? And as much as it sounds crazy, I didn't think about any of the difficulties or any of the problems because this is what I wanted to do. So it was brilliant. I took that gig, drove up to Charlotte a couple of days later, met the people, met my co-host, talked to them about what I would be doing. And I knew I was making the right decision immediately. I think the most amazing bit is that my job is literally to talk about soccer. It's incredible.
That's the dream, right?
Yeah, it really is. And I think about it and I wonder if I would be as excited if I was doing it in England. And obviously I would, because it's, you know, where I was born, it's where I've grown up and I appreciate the English game. But I think there's something really powerful about doing MLS and having almost a responsibility to educate and entertain people that are new to soccer. It's about finding that balance between being an analyst and breaking it down and knowing a lot about the sport from playing and from watching and from doing this, but finding the thin line of educating the newbies without being condescending and entertaining people that know everything about the sport already. So it's a really fun balance to find, and seeing it grow is incredible. And I think, like I've said earlier on, being the first ever voice and being one of the first female voices in MLS is huge, because I'm setting a pathway for people to feel like this is something you can hear. Because I mentioned watching Match of the Day, and yes, now I know there's females on it now, but when I was growing up in, you know, the early 2000s, there was no female voices. So it's fun to think that I can also be one of those, you know, pioneers, so to say, for others as well.
No, very well said. You're living the dream. Like I said, Major League Soccer, it's only getting bigger, and it's fantastic to see you doing so well. But tell us, Jessica, we interviewed our own broadcast member, Evan Weston, at Orlando City last year, and we had a weather delay up in Philadelphia Union. And both he and Miguel Gallardo, our club legend and fellow broadcaster, they had to ad lib for genuinely about 45 minutes. And that's live TV, you know, like I said, you do the radio, the commentating. What is the biggest challenge you found so far? I'm interested to hear.
Well, number one, we haven't yet had a rain delay, knock on wood, because I know there's a lot of bad weather in Orlando, and that's crazy, right? Because in England, I'd never heard of a lightning delay until I moved here in college. There was a time where there was lightning and they were like, you got to get off the pitch. And I was like, what? like I couldn't believe it. Obviously safety first, but I still find it interesting that we don't ever think about that in England, right? Like that's not a thing. Whereas here they have a literal mileage. Biggest challenge, finding the balance of being myself and being truly authentic to who I am, without people thinking I'm condescending or a soccer snob or using terminology to just be British. You know, there's words that are just normal to me to talk about the sport that to some people might think I'm being, you know, condescending. Like I use game and match interchangeably. However, if people hear me right away say match, they're already thinking, oh, look at you. Or if I use pitch instead of field, again, I use them interchangeably, but at times it can come across wrong. So I think always remembering to be authentic to myself and saying what comes naturally, but finding the balance for people not to think that you're a snob about it, you know?
That's really interesting to hear, because obviously we've been running our Twitter account since 2015, and honestly, Florida's like a second home to us. I'm actually going again in June for our home game with Houston Dynamo, and I'm a weird hybrid. I think that's what we've become, isn't it? You know, I'm obviously British, you know, I live back in Britain now, but I lived in Canada as well, so I'm a weird hybrid in the terminology I use now. But I hear you 100%. It's the new supporters, you don't want to be condescending. So no, really interesting stuff there. Now, couple last questions. Half an hour has flown by here, but I just wanted to ask you, yes, and I hope I've pronounced your colleague's name right here. You work in the broadcast booth at Bank of America Stadium alongside Will Palashuk. Hope I've got that right, Will.
Pretty good. I always just call him Willie P, because I still worry that I murder it.
You work in the broadcast booth with Willie P. I have to ask, because I remember scrolling Twitter, I think it was late on a Saturday, Sunday night, and I saw you guys going absolutely crazy after that Karol Swiderski thunderbolt of a free kick against FC Cincinnati. You referenced it earlier. Talk us through your memories of that golazzo, because it was a thunderbolt, like I said.
Well, honestly, I hadn't seen him take a free kick before, so I wasn't sure what to expect. So I think that's what caught me by surprise. You know, when you have a free kick specialist and they put the ball down and you're expecting them to bury it. Well, we hadn't seen that yet. So the fact that he took that rip and then finished it was incredible. You mentioned Willie P. He's quintessentially American in a brilliant way, right? Like he is over the top in a beautiful way. It's his energy is unreal, and he loves this club. He's been involved for a lot longer than me. He has been there since pretty much day one, organically falling in love with this side. So I think what you see from him is a fan perspective as well, which is really refreshing, and fans and our listeners gravitate towards it, because when we struggle, you can tell it bothers him. When we succeed, you can tell it really is emotionally brilliant for him. And I obviously care too, don't get me wrong. But as an analyst, I feel like I have to be a little bit more, not emotional, but a little bit more standoff and break it down afterwards. I have to be able to still say stuff. Whereas for him, the play-by-play, it's brilliant. And he makes some great cue bites as well. But he's a fantastic partner to have, and I'm grateful that I have someone that's so energetic about it, because I can feed off of him. And I'm not going to lie, he makes some brilliant social media clips that will probably eventually go viral as well. But it's a different, for people watching in England, I know a lot of my friends have been like, holy crap, you guys get like wild. You don't imagine the English middle-aged white commentators with their microphones quite getting like we do in there. It's definitely a party in the booth.
Yeah, no, it was a great goal. Maybe they would have been going wild in England, because that was some goal. And certainly the Orlando City defence are going to have to keep close tabs on the Polish international. He's your goals and assists leader right now. 2 back-to-back braces at home. So he's got 4 goals on the season and 1 assist as well. So Rodrigo Schlegel, Robin Janssen, you could have your hands full on Saturday. Now, before we round off, obviously Orlando City versus Charlotte FC, inaugural meeting of these two on Saturday. But the Lions will travel to the Queen City on August 21st. I have to ask you, Jessica, because you'll know, we've got very loyal supporters in Orlando. They follow the team all around the US and Canada. For any City supporters in town, can you recommend any must-visit bars or food joints for them to soak up the pre-game atmosphere?
All right, I'm a big fan of Big Ben, obviously. I think it's a brilliant name. And I'm always, whenever I go somewhere, I try and find the British pub. It's really good food, really authentic. They've got the real sausages, real bacon, that kind of thing. Plenty of TVs, fun environment. There's also a soccer-specific bar called Hooligans, which is brilliant as well. But honestly, it's a town of breweries. There's a lot of good beer places. And for me, the best place to stay is an area called South Park. It's a little fancy, but they've got a lot of nice food, a lot of good bars in that area. And I hope they fill it. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And the most special thing to remember for these traveling supporters that come up to Charlotte is that the supporters groups are really welcoming. They invite you into their tailgates. Something I'm really proud of witnessing our supporters group do is spread the word about the best places to go eat, the best places to go drink, the things to do. And they invite them into the tailgate lot to spend time with them. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. And we hope to see an area of purple, but not a stadium of purple, but you can have a nice little area of purple in our stadium.
I don't know. So geographically, the south of the States is probably, just over an hour flight. So I think we're going to be traveling well for that game, and certainly looking forward to that one. But of course, first we have Saturday's encounter at Exploria Stadium. That's almost our time up for today. So I want to say a big thank you, Jessica, for taking the time out to join us.
You're welcome.
And, as for Orlando City versus Charlotte, the game gets underway this Saturday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern, just past midnight in the UK. Unfortunately, this game won't be televised live in Britain like some of our others have. You can stick with Orlando City UK for our regular play-by-play commentary on Twitter. Thanks again, Jessica. And until next time, guys, Vamos Orlando.